There is a kind of discipline that doesn't panic when things go wrong. It doesn't disappear when you're exhausted. It doesn't collapse when motivation dies. It stays. Not because you feel strong, but because it was built to survive pressure. Today you're going to learn about a system designed for exactly that. A system forged long before alarms, calendars, dopamine hacks, or motivation culture ever existed. A system that created men who could endure hunger, isolation, silence, and fear without breaking. The shinobi. Think about it for a moment. How did they survive alone in hostile terrain for months? How did they train in total secrecy for years without praise or recognition? How did they maintain relentless consistency with no coaches watching, no reminders buzzing, and no speeches pushing them forward? Here's the uncomfortable truth. They weren't disciplined because they tried harder. They were disciplined because their system didn't rely on motivation at all. They followed a path known as ninpo, not a set of techniques, but a psychological structure for turning discipline into instinct. And once you understand its foundations, something becomes painfully obvious. Most modern discipline is fragile. It's built on feelings. It's built on motivation. It's built on optimism. The shinobi understood something science would only prove centuries later. The human brain was never designed for discipline. It was designed for survival. So they stopped fighting human nature, and instead they weaponized it. That's why their methods last when everything else fails. But don't misunderstand me. This path is not friendly. It doesn't care about your curiosity. It doesn't reward half commitment. It demands payment. Not in comfort, but in the destruction of the weaker self that keeps making promises and breaking them. Before we break down how this system works in real life, make sure you're subscribed, like the video, and turn on notifications, because what comes next builds on what you're about to hear. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Iga Province, Feudal Japan. 1540. In a quiet mountain village lived a 14-year-old boy known as Taisher. That wasn't his real name. No one used that anymore. They called him Taisher the Idol. From childhood, Taisher had dreamed of becoming a shinobi. Once, late at night, he had seen dark figures move across rooftops, silent, controlled, unreal. That image carved itself into his mind. But desire wasn't his problem. Discipline was. Every morning began the same way. Today I'll train seriously. He'd force out a few push-ups, 3 maybe 5, until his arms burned. Then he'd stop. He'd sit to meditate. His thoughts would scatter within minutes, and he'd stand up frustrated. He'd swing a wooden blade until fatigue whispered an excuse, and he'd listen. Nothing ever lasted. Monday morning, this time is different. Monday evening, I'll restart tomorrow. By Tuesday, the promise was already dead. His father, a blacksmith, watched all of this in silence. Strong hands, practical mind, no patience for fantasy. Shinobi don't exist, he would say. Ghost stories. You'll inherit my forge and forget these foolish dreams. What Taisher didn't know was that his father was lying. He knew the shinobi were real. He even knew where a hidden school rested deep in the mountains. But he never spoke of it, because he didn't trust his son's resolve. He believed the dream would collapse on its own. Still, Taisher couldn't let go. Each night he stared at the peaks. Each morning hope returned. Each afternoon he failed again. Until the day failure finally confronted him. After another meaningless training session, barely 20 minutes of broken effort, Taisher was walking home when he saw a man standing on the mountain path. Plain clothes, average build, nothing remarkable, except his eyes. They were sharp, as if they cut through excuses. You want to become a shinobi? It wasn't a question. Taisher froze. I was just... You wasted today again, the man said calmly, stepping closer. How many times have you promised yourself this would be the day? No response. None was needed. Come, the man said, turning toward the mountains. If you can keep up, I'll take you to the school. If you fall behind, you return home and accept the life waiting for you at the forge. Taisher looked up. 3 hours of brutal climbing. He had never committed to anything for 3 straight hours in his life. And yet, he took the first step. Something about that moment felt irreversible. Maybe it was the certainty in the man's voice. Maybe it was the realization that chances like this don't return. Either way, this was the last time Taisher would be allowed to quit without consequence. Or maybe Taisher wasn't afraid of the mountain at all. Maybe he was simply exhausted, not in his body but from living as the boy who always stopped halfway. I'll go. The first part of the ascent was tolerable. After 20 minutes, his breath grew sharp and shallow. By 40, fire spread through his legs. An hour in, the familiar voice returned, the one that had guided his life until now. This is pointless. You're not made for this. Turn back. You can try again tomorrow. The man ahead never looked back, never slowed his pace, never acknowledged the struggle behind him. 2 hours passed. Tayshiur was no longer climbing. He was pulling himself forward, skin torn against stone, dirt mixing with tears on his face. Every nerve screamed for surrender. And right there, shaking, ruined, barely conscious, something shifted. The pain wasn't the threat. The exhaustion wasn't the threat. The only thing that mattered was the choice he had made at the base of the mountain. He said he would follow. And a warrior does not abandon his word. Tayshiur forced himself upright. One step, then another. 3 hours and 15 minutes after the climb began, he reached the summit. His body gave out. He vomited. Then the world disappeared. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't outside anymore. Dark wooden beams above him. The faint trace of incense in the air. A silence so complete it felt intentional, watching. The man sat across from him. Without knowing it, he said evenly, "You have completed your first lesson of ninpo." Pause. Welcome to the Koga School. Chapter 2. The Death of the Weak Self. Tayshiur was ripped from sleep before dawn by the strike of a bell. Not gentle. Not ceremonial. A heavy bronze sound that vibrated through bone and thought alike. He stood quickly and saw 15 other boys already upright, dressed in identical dark garments, faces forward, unmoving. The same man stood before them. In ninpo, he said, there is no such thing as trying. There are only two states. You are, or you are not. From this moment forward, you are students. Students rise when the bell sounds. There is no discussion. Tayshiur glanced toward the window. The sky was still black. But sensei, what time? The look he received erased the question. Questions create thought, the master said. Thought creates hesitation. Hesitation creates death. The bell rings. You rise. Nothing else exists. The first week dismantled them. The bell before sunrise. An hour of still meditation. 2 hours of brutal conditioning. 2 more studying tactics and movement. Stealth drills until darkness swallowed the day. Sleep. Repeat. Every day Tayshiur wanted to quit. But this place had removed the option. Because here, promises weren't made in silence. On the first day, each student stood before the entire school and spoke the same oath. I walk the ninja path. My word is my life. If I break my word, I become nothing. Everyone heard it. The master recorded it. The identity was sealed. This wasn't motivation. It was a forced transformation. Tayshiur didn't promise effort. He declared existence. And when identity is declared publicly, the primitive brain treats failure as annihilation. For ancient humans, losing the trust of the tribe meant exile. Exile meant death. Your nervous system still runs that same ancient code. The shinobi didn't know neuroscience, but they mastered human nature. Their law was absolute. Never betray your oath. On the third morning, Tayshiur woke barely able to move. His muscles throbbed violently. His mind whispered, "You're injured. Rest today. One day doesn't matter." He looked around. Every other student was already standing, silent, unquestioning, and something terrifying became clear. If he stayed down, it wouldn't be private. It would be witnessed. The pain of movement was nothing compared to the shame of breaking his word in front of the tribe. So he stood. On the 5th night, during a quiet meal, one of the students leaned close and whispered, "This pace, it's impossible." He swallowed. "It's going to destroy us." During the first week, Tayshiur's mind revolted. "This is meaningless. You're not a machine. You need variety to grow." The thoughts came predictably, always at the same point in the sequence. Always when repetition removed novelty. Always when ego felt ignored. But the form did not change. The body moved whether the mind agreed or not. By the 10th day, the resistance softened. By the 20th, it grew quieter. By the 40th, something strange occurred. Tayshiur stopped thinking about the movements. His arms lifted without instruction. His breathing aligned itself without effort. His stance corrected itself before mistakes fully formed. For the first time in his life, action preceded emotion. And that terrified him. Because it revealed a truth no one likes to admit. Most people don't fail because they lack discipline. They fail because they give their emotions veto power. The form removed that power. There was nothing to negotiate with. Nothing to adjust. Nothing to personalize. Only execution. The master explained it one night as they watched the students train in silence. The form is not a prison, he said. It is a furnace. When variation disappears, awareness has nowhere to hide. That is when mastery begins. Tayshiur understood then. Variety had always been his escape route. A way to quit without admitting he had quit. This was different. This was exposure. By the 60th day his body had changed. But more importantly, his relationship to discomfort had changed. Pain no longer signaled danger. Boredom no longer demanded relief. Fatigue no longer required permission to stop. They were simply sensations. Signals, not commands. On the 83rd day something broke completely. Not his body. His inner dialogue. The voice that once negotiated, complained, delayed, fell silent. In its place was rhythm. Wait, move, breathe, repeat. No drama. No resistance. Just presence. Chapter 5 The Silence After Decision. One evening, Taisha approached the master. "Sensei," he said, "it's quiet now." The master nodded. "That is because you are no longer arguing with yourself. Most people," he continued, "live in constant civil war. One part commands, another part rebels. In ninpo, we end the war by removing the argument." Taisha bowed. "What comes next?" The master looked at him for a long moment. "Now," he said, "we see who you are when no one is watching. Because discipline built on witnesses still depends on fear. Discipline built on rhythm still depends on structure. But the final test removes both. No audience. No punishment. No bell. Only choice. And that is where most systems collapse." That night, Taisha was given a simple instruction. At dawn he was to rise alone. No bell would sound. He was to complete the entire sequence without supervision. No one would check. No one would know. Except him. As the master turned to leave, he added one final sentence. "Now you will discover whether the oath lives in your mouth or in your bones. You're not a machine. If you don't change things, you'll lose your sanity." By the second week, even the other students began to murmur. "You're becoming mechanical," one whispered. "Where's the creativity? Where's you?" The master overheard and let out a quiet laugh. "Creativity without structure," he said, "is chaos wearing a beautiful mask. You want expression? First, master the form. Only then will expression mean anything." The third week became psychological combat. Every day the same whisper returned. "Just today change something. One adjustment won't matter." But Taisha remembered the boy who had been sent away. He remembered the oath spoken in front of witnesses. So he did not change a single thing. By the fourth week, something unexpected happened. Not because Taisha grew stronger, but because his resistance grew tired. The mind had exhausted itself. It had tried persuasion, threats, logic, excuses disguised as wisdom. None of it worked. Eventually the voice stopped arguing. Week 6 was where the transformation began. Taisha was midway through his push-ups when a strange realization struck him. There was no internal dialogue, no counting, no encouragement, no negotiation. His body moved through the sequence smoothly, uninterrupted, like water following a channel carved by time. It wasn't boredom. It was relief. Freedom from the constant tax of decision. During the 8th week, while practicing sword forms, he noticed something new. A minute adjustment in his wrist angle. So small it would have gone unnoticed before. The master had seen it too. "Now you see," he said. "When form becomes automatic, awareness becomes available." Centuries later, science would describe this same shift. How repeated, identical action moves control from conscious effort into deeper neural systems, freeing attention for refinement and perception. The shinobi never needed the words. They knew the outcome. On the 45th day, Taisha fell ill. Fever. Heavy limbs. A fogged mind. The excuse arrived immediately. "Skip today. Recover properly. Resume when you're ready." This is where most people collapse. Because they believe the most destructive lie of all. If I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. It sounds responsible. It feels intelligent. And it quietly murders every streak you've ever tried to build. Taisha approached the master. "Sensei," he said, "I'm sick. Should I rest today?" The master studied him, unimpressed. "Rest is not the same as stopping," he said. "You're not asking about recovery. You're asking for permission to introduce a break." "What's the difference?" Taisha asked. The master gestured toward the valley. "A river never stops flowing," he said. "In drought, it becomes thin. In storms, it becomes violent. But the moment it stops, it is no longer a river. It becomes an empty channel. Your practice is the same." That day the master revealed the third pillar of ninpo. Muku, practice without gaps. "Feel weak," he said. "Do 10 push-ups instead of 50. Breathe for 5 minutes instead of 20. Move even poorly. Momentum matters more than perfection. That day, Taysher completed half the sequence. It was clumsy, incomplete, and exactly sufficient, because the pattern survived. The next day, when the fever lifted, his body returned to full training without resistance. Had he stopped entirely, the body would have sensed rupture. And once a rupture appears, the mind always asks, if you stopped yesterday, why not today? But there was no rupture. The rhythm remained intact. On the 70th day, a violent storm arrived without warning. By morning, the training hall was flooded. For the first time, Taysher felt genuine relief. A real excuse. He went straight to the master. Sensei, where do we train today? The master pointed calmly toward the covered patio. There. But it's raining. The master looked at him, expression unchanged. So, do you think enemies wait for clear skies? Do you think missions happen only when conditions feel fair? Taysher lowered his head and trained in the rain. Clothes soaked through. Stones slick beneath his feet. Cold biting past skin into bone. And still, no interruption. No pause. No exception. Chapter 5 The Invisible Preparation. Taysher believed he had mastered discipline. He was wrong. The most dangerous obstacle was still ahead. Not pain. Not fatigue. Not boredom. The unexpected. On the 80th day, his father arrived at the school. A family emergency. Taysher was needed at home immediately. Panic surged, not because of the crisis, but because of the sequence. 20 days remained. If he stopped now, the chain would snap. Before Taysher could speak, the master raised his hand. Do obstacles ask permission? Does life respect your schedule? But Sensei, Taysher said, I swore to complete the cycle. You swore to practice without gaps, the master replied calmly. You never swore it would be comfortable. This is the real examination. Not when conditions cooperate, but when everything collapses at once. That day, the master revealed the fourth pillar of ninpo, zanai, decision made beforehand. A shinobi is never surprised, he said, because his answers are chosen before the question appears. When this happens, you do that. No discussion. No hesitation. Together, they listed every disruption that could shatter consistency. Travel. Illness. Injury. Weather. Visitors. Crisis. For each, a fixed response was written. Travel, pre-dawn roadside training. Illness, reduced effort, never zero. Injury, train what remains functional. Rain, covered space. Family emergency, essential 15-minute sequence. No improvisation. No emotional bargaining. Only execution. Taysher returned to his village. For 3 days, he worked beside his family from sunrise until darkness. But every morning at 4 he rose. 20 push-ups. 10 minutes of stillness. Basic sword forms. Nothing impressive. Nothing dramatic. Enough. The neighbors whispered. His father is in trouble and he's swinging a sword at dawn? They misunderstood. The training didn't steal from his family. It preserved the man who could stand for them without resentment or collapse. Taysher returned to the school on the 83rd day. The master asked only one question. How many days did you miss? None, Sensei. The master smiled for the first time. Now you understand. When decisions are made in advance, the mind doesn't waste energy choosing under pressure. It simply acts. Preparation multiplies consistency, not motivation. Day 95. 5 days remained. Taysher was no longer talking about discipline. He embodied it. He didn't promise mornings. He woke. He didn't seek motivation. The sequence occurred on its own. The others noticed. How does he never fail? One student whispered. An older one answered quietly, he doesn't fail because he no longer tries. He simply is. Day 100 arrived. Taysher completed the sequence for the 100th consecutive time. No gaps. No exceptions. No negotiation. The bell rang, ending the shugyo. He expected relief. Release. Instead, there was silence. Heavy. So, the master called him forward. How do you feel? He asked. Empty, Sensei, Taysher replied. But not hollow. Like something heavy has been removed. The master nodded. What left you was the self that needed permission. You have reached the 5th pillar of ninpo. Mushin, the mind without hesitation. Chapter 6 The mind that does not waver. Mushin means no mind, the master said. But it does not mean ignorance. It means action without friction. Movement without debate. Clarity without effort. No ego arguing with necessity. No delay between intention and execution. When a blade moves toward you, he continued, there is no time to think. If you think, you die. The response must already exist. That is what you forged during those 100 days. He paused. Not a habit. A structure. You eliminated the part of yourself that negotiates. Taysher understood immediately. For an entire month, not once had the thought appeared, maybe I'll skip today. Maybe tomorrow would be better. The practice happened the way his heart beat, the way his lungs filled with air. No argument. No resistance. The master continued. Now comes the real test. The 100 days are finished. The fixed form is gone. The question is simple. Will you return to who you were? Or have you become someone else? Taysher didn't hesitate. I'll continue. Why? The master asked. Because I'm no longer someone who trains, Taysher said. I'm someone who is. The master nodded once. Welcome to true ninpo. 3 months later, Taysher was no longer a student. He was a shinobi. Not by title. Not by ceremony. But because something irreversible had occurred. His discipline disturbed people. He never spoke about training. Never complained. Never negotiated. He simply acted. A new student once asked him, how do you never fail? Taysher answered calmly, failure doesn't exist in my mind anymore. Not because I'm stronger, but because I removed the option. The student frowned. How do you remove an option? You sacrifice the one who hesitates, Taysher said. The one who bargains. The one who delays. When that person dies, only the one who keeps his word remains. But the change went deeper than discipline. People didn't say that's impressive. They said that's not normal. And that was the point. Chapter 7. The warrior who disturbed 6 months after completing his shugyo, Taysher was sent on his first real mission. Infiltration. 7 days. Minimal sleep. Limited food. Everything went wrong. And the mission was still completed. When he returned with the documents, others asked how he endured. I did what was required, he said. But the truth was quieter. Not once during those 7 days did the thought appear, I can't handle this. That voice no longer existed. In its place was clarity. Emotion. Later, the master pulled him aside. People will react differently to you now, he said. They'll call you obsessive. Extreme. Unbalanced. Do you know why? Taysher shook his head. Because your discipline exposes their excuses. You prove their limits are choices. And that makes them uncomfortable. The master was right. As Taysher's reputation spread, reactions changed. Some admired him. Some feared him. Most felt uneasy. He's not normal. No one needs that level of discipline. That can't be healthy. Taysher understood something essential. When your discipline disturbs others, you've crossed a threshold. Normal people get normal results. Warriors operate where I can't no longer exists. One morning before dawn, Taysher trained alone in the courtyard. A group of new students passed by. One whispered, that's terrifying. He never stops. Taysher heard them and smiled. He remembered the boy he once was. The boy who quit after 3 push-ups. The boy everyone called lazy. That boy was gone. Discipline doesn't make you better. It makes you different. So different that others look at you and think, that isn't human. And when you hear those words, you'll know the negotiation is dead. And only the warrior remains. The 5 pillars of ninpo. Because the truth is this. The system was never complicated. It stands on 5 pillars. First, ketsui, the public oath. You stop making private promises that die in silence. You declare identity openly. Not I'll try, but this is who I am. Identity replaces intention. Second, rei, unchanging rhythm. Time is fixed. The schedule is non-negotiable. When one disappears, half the battle ends. Your body learns the pattern. The argument never starts. Third, kata, perfect form. Same practice. Same order. Same execution. Every day. No creativity. No variation. Until action becomes automatic, and awareness becomes free. Fourth, zanai, prior decision. You decide in advance. When this happens, I do that. No thinking in the moment. No emotional bargaining. Preparation replaces willpower. Fifth, mushin, no mind. The final state. No hesitation. No friction. No internal conflict. Action and intention collapse into one. You don't force discipline. You are disciplined. And this is the truth most people never accept. Discipline isn't built by motivation. It's built by removal. You remove negotiation. You remove options. You remove the self that delays, until only one remains, the one who keeps his word. That is ninpo, and once you build it, it never leaves you. Fourth, muku, no gaps. You never allow zero. Emergencies receive reduced effort. Illness receives scaled effort. But momentum is never broken, because zero doesn't rest discipline. Zero kills continuity. Fifth, zenai, prior decision. You solve problems before they arrive. When X happens, you already know you'll do Y. No thinking. No bargaining. Only execution. These 5 pillars transformed Taisha from a boy who couldn't finish 3 push-ups into a shinobi trusted with impossible missions. Not because he became stronger, but because he destroyed the version of himself that hesitated. Now the question turns to you. Are you ready for this kind of change? Because this path isn't comfortable. It isn't gentle. And it isn't for people who want minor improvements. This system demands a sacrifice. You must give up the version of yourself that negotiates, the one that delays, the one with endless reasons why today isn't the day. And in that space something else forms. A person who doesn't rely on motivation, because motivation is for people who are still deciding. A person who keeps commitments, because commitments are no longer tasks. They are identity. People will notice. They'll call you extreme, obsessive, unbalanced. Good. That means you've crossed the line most never do. Because the only discipline that produces extraordinary results is the kind that makes ordinary people uncomfortable. The question isn't whether this system works. The question is whether you have the courage to commit without escape routes. Don't test it. Don't experiment. Don't negotiate. Choose one habit. Make it public. Fix the time. Define the form. Commit to 100 days with no gaps. Pre-solve every obstacle. Then watch what happens when you stop arguing with yourself. Taisha wasn't special. He was weak and willing to let that version die so something stronger could exist. You can do the same. If this video helped you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Discipline is only dangerous when you don't have enough of it. Thank you for staying until the end. Until the next video.